Well, buckle up, because the story we're diving into today has more twists than a pretzel.
Yeah.
We're talking about a potential showdown over online shopping costs that suddenly, it didn't happen. And it ends with President Trump giving a thumbs up to Jeff Bezos.
It's quite something.
Okay, let's unpack this surprising turn of events.
What's fascinating here, I think, is how a seemingly straightforward business decision, whether or not to display potential tariff costs online, just got tangled up so quickly.
Right. High-stakes trade policy, politics.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we've got the reports detailing Amazon thinking about this display, the White House reaction, which was sharp, and then Trump praising Bezos, all against this backdrop of, ongoing trade stuff.
So our mission today.
Yeah, basically cut through the noise, understand what this brief but pretty intense episode reveals about how tariffs hit you, the consumer, and that tricky balance between big business and government.
Okay, so let's get right to it then. What exactly sparked this mini-drama? What was the initial report?
So the initial spark came from Punchbowl News. They reported that Amazon was planning to show customers tariff costs, specifically on their Amazon Haul site.
Ah, the Temu competitor site. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. The idea, or at least how it was first reported, was to give a clear price breakdown, like explicitly including any tariffs.
But it sounds like Amazon hit the brakes on that pretty fast.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Initially, their spokesman, Tim Doyle, put out a statement. He acknowledged the Haul team had considered itemizing import charges.
Okay, so they admitted thinking about it.
Right, but they were really quick to stress it was never on the table for the main Amazon.com site.
Ah, okay.
And then they followed up even stronger, clarifying it was never actually approved at any level, and bottom line, it won't be happening. Not on Haul, not anywhere.
Which brings us to the White House. Their reaction seemed less than pleased, even before Amazon put out those final clarifications.
That's putting it mildly. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt gave a pretty strong critique. She called the reported plan a hostile and political act.
Wow. Hostile.
Yeah. And what's interesting is the angle she took. She questioned why Amazon wouldn't have done this, say, during the Biden administration's inflation period.
Framing it politically.
Totally suggests the White House saw this potential move through a, very political lens.
And she also kind of sidestepped questions about the Trump-Bezos relationship, right?
Yeah.
Which has been well complicated.
Exactly. Declined to comment on their current relationship. This is despite reports that Bezos has been trying to maybe improve ties ahead of a potential second Trump term.
Interesting.
And it's worth noting, too, the market reacted. Amazon's stock dipped a bit that Tuesday morning when trading opened.
Really? Just based on her comments?
Seems like it. Investors were definitely paying attention. It just shows how sensitive even the idea of showing these tariff costs has become. Like, there's real concern about the public seeing that impact.
Okay, so here's where the plot thickens. Apparently, President Trump himself picked up the phone, called Jeff Bezos about this.
That's the report, yeah. Sources say that call happened Tuesday morning, specifically about these reports, the tariff display idea.
And what was the tone? The initial report said Trump was complaining.
That was the first word, yeah, complaining. But then a senior official stepped in later to clarify, said the call was actually good, a positive interaction.
Huh. Quite a rapid shift in the narrative there.
It really highlights how quickly things can change or how interpretations shift in these kinds of situations.
And then just hours later, Trump is publicly praising Bezos. That's quite the 180.
It is striking, isn't it? Later that same day, talking to reporters, Trump was really complimentary about the Amazon founder.
What did he say?
Called him very nice, said he did the right thing by sorting the problem out quickly. And of course, you can't really ignore the context here. Bezos owns the Washington Post.
Right, which hasn't always been Trump's biggest fan.
Precisely. So this sudden praise, it definitely adds another layer of intrigue, almost like watching, fast-forward political theater.
This whole sequence, it really puts a spotlight on the pressure around tariffs, doesn't it? Can you maybe paint a bigger picture? What's the broader landscape like right now?
Absolutely. These events, they really highlight the growing political friction from Trump's global trade policies. The tariffs, especially on goods from China, are starting to bite more visibly.
Is there any data on public opinion?
Yeah, there was a recent Washington Post ABC News Ipsos poll. It found nearly two-thirds of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of tariffs. So that gives you a sense of the public mood.
It's not just public opinion, right? Retailers must be feeling the pinch.
Oh, definitely. They're facing huge challenges navigating these tariffs on Chinese goods. Some import taxes are hitting like 145%.
Wow, 145%.
Yeah. So, unsurprisingly, a lot of importers are actually pausing shipments from China right now. They're trying to figure out the rules, the costs.
Which means potential disruptions for us, the shoppers.
Exactly. And the expectation is these costs, they'll likely mean higher prices on platforms like Amazon. It especially hits smaller sellers, the ones relying on Chinese manufacturing.
It's interesting you mentioned Temu earlier. How are they, and maybe Shane, handling this compared to Amazon's decision?
Yeah, it's a real contrast. Temu has actually started listing import charges separately for customers, so they're showing those tariff costs.
Being more transparent that...
Seems like it. Both Temu and Shane have also said publicly they've had to raise prices because of these U.S. trade policy costs, which is, quite different from Amazon deciding not to show these costs on their main site.
And wasn't there a change to some import rule recently, too, the de minimis thing?
Yes, exactly. The Trump administration moved to close that loophole. De minimis basically allowed low-value shipments under $800 to come into the U.S., often without facing duties. Think small online orders.
So closing that means even those smaller packages might get hit with tariffs now.
That's the implication. It adds another layer of cost, especially for platforms relying on lots of small, direct-from-China shipments. So you see this divergence. Temu showing the costs, maybe justifying price hikes, while Amazon seems to be prioritizing a smoother checkout, even if it hides those costs.
We even heard from the Port of Los Angeles about this, didn't we? About shipping slowdowns.
We did. Gene Soroka, the executive director there, mentioned a slowdown in shipments from China, said businesses are pausing imports, basically unwilling to absorb those high costs without more certainty.
So that directly affects what's available for you and me to buy.
Absolutely. Fewer goods flowing through major ports means potential delays, maybe some items harder to find. And remember, CEOs from Walmart, Target, Home Depot, they've all warned about this. Tariffs on Chinese goods mean higher prices and maybe even empty shelves for American consumers.
So if you're trying to buy, a new coffee maker online, these paused shipments, the potential tariffs, could mean you wait longer or pay more.
Precisely.
Right.
That's the real-world impact.
Okay, so zooming out again then, what does this whole Amazon tariff situation, this kerfuffle, really mean for you, the listener, in your day-to-day shopping?
Well, if Amazon had displayed those tariff costs, it would have given you a much clearer picture, right?
Oh, yeah.
You'd see exactly how trade policy hits the price tag of stuff you buy online.
Like a separate line item for the tariff.
Imagine that, yeah. Base price, then tariff cost. That's a level of transparency we don't usually get into the mechanics of international trade pricing. So the uncertainty now, the potential for price hikes, it could definitely sway your buying choices, maybe affect what products are even available.
And it's really telling, isn't it, that companies like Temu are going one way more transparent while Amazon, on its main site anyway, chose not to.
It really is. It raises big questions about what information you as a consumer should have access to and how these hidden costs end up shaping your whole shopping experience.
So just to quickly recap, Amazon thought about showing tariff costs, specifically on that Amazon Haul site, but then backed off pretty quickly after a strong White House reaction and that call from President Trump.
Right.
And this whole thing just shines a light on how complex and, frankly, politically sensitive tariffs are right now.
Exactly. And seeing how differently retailers are handling this, some showing the costs, others not, it really makes you think, doesn't it? It leads to this final thought for you, listening. What responsibility do companies actually have to make these hidden fees, these import costs, visible?
Yeah, how much do they show us?
And maybe even more, what does this whole episode tell us about those behind-the-scenes pressures, the politics that influence what information we ultimately see or don't see when we go to buy something?